2025. Anyway, it is Wednesday. And yeah, yesterday we saw no Regretta Thunberg, the once climate activist, now Hamas activist, Hamas supporter, Greta Thunberg of Sweden, being processed out of Israel and sent back on an El Al flight to Sweden via Paris. In Paris, she stopped to do a little bit of a press briefing with a gaggle of reporters. Met her in the airport when she disembarked from the airplane, and a bunch of her supporters there, walked with her, I guess, from where she got disembarked to the airplane where she was supposed to go to. I didn't actually see any news about whether she got on the plane to Sweden or not, but Israel did pay for her ticket to be, all the way to Sweden so she could go home. Whatever. I guess maybe she did go there. I really don't know if she did or didn't. But yeah, she was, after being, interviewed by the Israeli authorities when they brought her to the port of Ashdod, she was promptly offered to watch the video of the brutal attacks by Hamas on October 7th, and she and her cohorts refused to do so, apparently, which is frankly shameful on their behalf, that they refused to even look at the horrors committed by Hamas. But they did. They refused, apparently, to look at the horrors that Hamas committed, and which gave Israel the reason to go and attack Hamas and to prosecute this war as it has been doing. Now, let me just make it clear. Do I agree with every decision Israel has made in this war? No, I don't. Has Israel made some mistakes in this war? Yeah, I'm sure they have. 100% they've made mistakes. Should there be some accountability on behalf of like anybody who knowingly did break rules of war? Yeah, absolutely. Whether they're Israeli or Palestinian, whatever, or otherwise, there's no excuse for breaking laws of war. You can't just go around and destroy property. You can't just go around and harm people willy-nilly, right? War has rules. That doesn't mean that, unfortunately, there can never be civilians harmed, because we know that in the laws of war, people can actually be harmed in the various calculations that militaries make in order to achieve their objectives. That is a sad and terrible part of war. It's one of the many reasons I always say war sucks, war is terrible. But that does not make every terrible thing that happens necessarily a war crime. It certainly can feel like it is, though, when you are either a victim of it, or related to a victim of it, or a friend of it, or somebody who just has sympathy for those who are suffering in the war. Right? You don't actually need to be related to a victim of war to have sympathy for them or empathy. But, right, not every act in war is a war crime. Unfortunately, there are many innocent people that get hurt in every single war. But what we saw on October 7th, when Hamas literally broadcast to the world their war crimes, they were wantonly and intentionally targeting civilians. They were going after civilian residential areas on purpose. They attacked a civilian music festival on purpose, right? They did all these things on purpose. Now you can argue, well, they also attacked military bases and those are legitimate targets. Okay, you can say that. I will counter with the fact that in between regular armed forces, you could argue that. But Hamas is not a regular armed force. They are a terrorist organization prescribed as such by the international community, not just Israel. So they don't have a legitimate reason to attack even an army, because they are a terrorist organization. That makes them an illegitimate armed force. But even if you say, well, what if they never committed a war crime and only attacked army bases. Well, okay, well then fine. Then you could argue that point, and you could say they are a kind of legitimate armed resistance movement, but that is not the reality. They historically have always targeted innocent civilians as much or more, in fact, than they've targeted military installations and military soldiers. And the reason, soldiers, and the reason for that is because they know that if they went face to face against the Israeli army, they don't have a chance, right? Yes, they got lucky that they attacked Israel on October 7th at a time when Israel, even though it should have been on high alert, was not, because it was a high holiday, it was a Shabbat, and Israel was getting a bit lax with its security, depending too much on technical intelligence and not trusting the eyes on the ground who warned the government, hey, we believe there's going to be an attack. So anyway, the point is, right, Greta Thunberg refused to watch the videos of those attacks, which is a shame, because maybe had she done that, she would have learned something about the people she claims to support, which is the Hamas specifically, right? Why do I say she supports the Hamas specifically? Well, one of her crewmates on the boat was formerly in some kind of an alignment with them. I don't know if he was. I don't think he was actually part of their organization directly, but he worked with them at the very least. He was, he was affiliated with them. Let's just say that in some way. And other members of her crew as well are vocal, ardent supporters of Hamas specifically. They would not condemn what Hamas has done on October 7th, even though they were literally war crimes that Hamas themselves recorded, live streamed, and bragged to the world about. And anybody who is not familiar with that content is just like sticking their head in the sand. Right? You're pretending something didn't happen that definitely happened. And a very horrible thing happened on that day. Many very horrible things happened on that day. And that is the justification for Israel saying, we've had enough of Hamas. They have to leave power by force if they don't surrender. And we have to get our hostages back. That's it. That's what ends this war. It's very simple. And people like Greta Thunberg and her fans that don't want to see that reality are kidding themselves. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, sort of, but also in Israel, Australia barred Hillel Fuld, a friend of mine, well, a guy that I've known for many years in the tech marketing space. In fact, I interviewed him once on one of my podcasts about marketing many years ago. And Hillel is a great guy who does lots of great work advocating for Israel and basically speaking out about the reality of the situation on the ground. And he always does it, frankly, in a very respectful manner. And his brother, he lost his brother Ari to a Palestinian terrorist some years ago. And his brother died a hero, literally protecting the lives of other people as he fell. And his brother managed to stop the terrorist at the same time, even though his life was sadly cut short. So Hillel knows about the direct consequences of Palestinian terrorism and the awful things it does, and how it directly and awfully impacts families and people. He knows about that very well, and he's a great person to, have as a speaker to speak about Israel issues, etc. But he was not even going to Australia to speak about this stuff. He was literally going to there, apparently, to talk to the Magen David Adom, right, the Jewish, Magen David, the Jewish Red Cross, if you will, or the Jewish Magen David organization that's in Israel and has supporters around the world, to talk to them about, the situation, etc., and how, it helps to have supporters around the world to contribute to Magen David Adom and to help keep that organization, which is an amazing organization, to keep it running, because it's very important for the safety and health and security of Israel. It's very important ambulatory service. And he's been blocked from going there because they said he would be a threat to the security of the country, which is just insane. They let in people who talk about, genocide and all this, who were like, Islamist extremists, hate preachers and all that stuff. They let them go to Australia and speak, but they don't let Hillel speak. All right, I gotta go, guys. See you. Peace.